I do believe that a lot of Lilith practitioners who are still centering men are still stuck in the garden. And I don't mean that as an insult in any way. It's literally Lilith's path. And I think that when people start working with deities or entities, they think that they are taking on that relationship and then will embody the transformed version of that deity, but that is not the case. And this is why sometimes we warn people not to take on deities unless you're ready, because the deity itself is not the destination. By working with a deity, you do not become the finished version of that deity. Because, like, even if you look at the Morrigan, she is power and strength. You look at Lilith, she is sovereignty. You look at Jesus, enlightenment. The problem is we're looking at the statue of that deity and we are ignoring that it had to be hammered into shape. When you take on working with a deity, you begin walking the path of that deity. Like when you start working with the Morrigan, you don't suddenly become fearless and independent and powerful. Instead, you might find yourself confronted with situations that force you to become those things. When people become Christian, they don't suddenly become like Jesus. Jesus says, take up your cross and follow me. It works that way with other deities. You have to pick up the burden and carry it with you. And then when somebody is venerating Lilith, they are usually in the garden. It begins in the garden. If we are looking at her symbolic and mythological and spiritual lore, and we are taking that imagery and that narrative into ourselves as a deity, you begin in the garden. As far as the lore of Lilith and the lack of time in the Bible and the external additions to Lilith's lore that happened in the 8th century and on, we don't know how long she was in the garden with Adam, if she was there. But we can assume that it was probably for a little bit. If we look at her lore as her being created equally from Adam, would have been his partner. It wasn't until he tried to subjugate her that the betrayal happened. The subjugation was the betrayal. And she flees. When she flees, she is alone. She's in exile. And then she becomes absolute rage. Over time, that softens down into a sovereign being. When a devotee wants to welcome a being like Lilith into their life, they are welcoming in that journey. And a lot of the times, she will show up for people while they are still in the garden, while they are still at risk of being subjugated by a partner or someone that they feel is their equal before a betrayal is going to happen. And just like Jesus saying, take up your cross and follow me, Lilith will walk beside you. Lilith will reinforce you. Taking on Lilith doesn't mean you're healed. It doesn't mean that you have escaped the garden yet. If you venerate the Morrigan, perhaps you find yourself constantly in battle. Perhaps you find yourself constantly having to speak your truth or speak other people's truth or fight for justice. It is not an easy road. If you take on Persephone, maybe you are still in the underworld. If you want to take up working with Loki, you may find yourself in situations of humiliation and punishment and binding. You might find yourself struggling with narcissism and self-loathing. If you venerate Odin, maybe you have anxiety. Maybe you can't ever find the answers that you're looking for. Maybe you want to control something, but you can't grasp it. The point of venerating a deity and working with a deity is not to take a seat on the throne with the deity. It is to walk the path of the deity with the deity. Yes, some people who venerate Lilith are still in the garden. That doesn't mean that Lilith isn't there waiting for them. She is rage, but she is patient until people realize that the garden is not safe, until they let go of that familiarity of the garden, until they let go of Adam, until they let go of that need to belong or that need to have validation. They will stay in the garden. And it's not at all because those people are weak. If anything, I would argue that they're strong, because to walk with a deity or a being like Lilith is no easy task. Leaving something safe and leaving something familiar is terrifying. Know that Lilith had to walk that path. Lilith had to leave that garden, and she will get you out of it as well, eventually.